Show, and this is a continuation of the interview with my sister Amy Vetter, who is Vice President of the Wilderness Society. We're talking about the importance of nature to people, and I think you'll enjoy it. That reminds me of a story of when we first moved to the lake in Madison, Mark and I, and that was just before the Iraq War began. And of course, like most people that I knew, I was very against the war. And it was also a time when there were a lot of, the terrorist attacks that happened in Washington, D.C. on the Pentagon. And I was on the telephone with my friend Jane Silver. You've met Jane. And she was flipping out, just totally on edge. And I mean, she lives in Washington, therefore there was a greater reason to be concerned about what was happening. On the other hand, I was very sad and very upset and had been very involved in the demonstrations that happened and trying to, writing letters and trying to keep the war from starting. But it was clear it was going to happen. But I was sitting out in front of my house on the lake, and I just could feel that my problems, even the problems of my species, were so small in comparison to this vista of all of the earth and the vista of nature that I saw. And I felt smaller, humbler, like you were saying, that my problems were so minor compared to, this vastness, but also bigger, because I was a part of that vastness. Yeah. I was a part of that community of life. And there was something about that that centered me in a very, very deep way that allowed me not to be so crazy about the war that was coming up. Just sort of see it as, okay, this is the next insanity that my species is going to perpetrate on itself.
Well, you brought up the nature deficit disorder and all. There's a pretty strong movement in the U.S. at least called environmental justice, and people who have not had advantages of all sorts in life are those who end up suffering more. And most of it environmentally, and most of that's been centered around pollution and toxics and all of that, and that their neighborhoods are the ones most heavily influenced by all of those negative environmental issues out there. But more recently, a lot more attention is being given to the fact that they're also disadvantaged in not having access to, or again, a sort of social encouragement or appreciation for wildness and nature. And so there now is a concerted effort to not only make sure that people realize it's out there and try to pull people into care and it's yours too, but actually to get inner city kids, like you said in Scotland, out to some of these places. And again, it doesn't have to be deeply, long distances away, but have people appreciate, have the opportunity to appreciate nature and some of these inner city groups are becoming very concerned that that is an important part of life that kids are growing up without. There's a program in the Bronx, the southern part of the Bronx, where people have been actually rehabilitating part of the edge of the Bronx River and creating a little nature park there. And kids are using it a lot more, and they're in there fishing and doing other things that never dreamed of doing in the Bronx. It's a whole new world for everybody. And it's right there in the front backyard.
I mean, I think that's part of nature deficit disorder, as I understand it, too, is that where we grew up, we were so close to nature, whichever part of the year we were living, that we could just run out into the woods, run out into the field, and we could do those totally non-structured things that kids in the cities often don't do these days because of fear of letting a kid be out in the streets without any supervision. I mean,
that's another whole issue, though.
That is a different issue.
I think even families not in inner cities, their kids' time is much more structured.
Right.
Part of it is concerned about what they'd be doing otherwise, or their security or whatever, but they're much more structured. And so, that, which is another part of the wild. It's not just that it's humbling and different and not under our control, but the flip side is it's free. Things are happening freely, unpredictably. They're not scheduled in our consciousness, at least. And so you can discover, and things can be new and different, and they are, as they say in the Wilderness Act, untrammeled. They're free to be. And that, to me, is the kind of thing that ought to attract young people. Here's this. It's wild. It is wild.
Exactly.
So wouldn't that be great to be part of something wild?
There's just at the end of Gregory Street where we used to live, there's this ravine that they turned into a park. And
what kind of park? Sort of manicured and...
No.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty wild. It's just, and they're not only are they, I guess it was pretty down in the dumps too. It hadn't been taken care of very well, and so people are now, A, taking better care of it, but B, they're like leaving piles of sticks so that the kids can go in there and make a teepee out of the sticks, or play in ways that we used to do. Go out in the woods and build a fort, or go to the little Niagara and imagine some play because it's a waterfall. Things like that. Where it's just your imagination runs wild as well, and you get to play in an unstructured way, which is, as you said, has to do with discovery.
No, it's a completely different world.
A playfulness that you don't have in structured activities.
Yeah. Good for the spirit.
Exactly.
The soul, the mind, all of those things.
Exactly. Good for the soul, the mind, and all those things. That's a good way to end, don't you think? Thank you, Amy.
When the people ask me sometimes...
Don't keep doing it.
People ask me sometimes, how'd you get into all this? What... And I like asking other people that same question. How did you... And the thing that I go back to almost always is growing up on the edge of a little village and being able to just walk out the backyard, and it was old field and young forest, that had been hammered, I'm sure, at some point. But we were out there puttering around in a stream that had little crayfish. You could wander through the rock gardens in the woods and find daisies that were grown on their own.
And next door, the Higgs had a bluebird nest.
No, I don't remember that.
I love those bluebirds.
But it was just wonder and being able to be out there alone in the breeze with different smells, and that sort of sense of discovery, and just being in a different place alone with all this around me. And that's what I go back to and I remember, and it's that being a really important part of why I wanted to do it, why I wanted to be out in mountains with gorillas or whatever. It had to do with that being in another place. And especially, I enjoy it most on my own or with a very small group. But it's not necessary, but it's part of it.